Hello, this is our Voice Stories channel. She broke up with me the same way someone might mention the weather. Flat, final, and utterly detached. Her parting line? We'll always be friends, though. I remember staring at her for a second, then forcing a polite smile. Absolutely, I said. It felt like the right kind of word to close a chapter. Calm, measured, adult. Weeks later, she realized that friendship didn't include free rent, emotional support, or car repairs, especially after I started dating her roommate. The end of our 2-year relationship came quietly on a Tuesday evening. There was no shouting match, no tears, no dramatic scene. Just a carefully rehearsed speech delivered with condescension polished to perfection. And it ended with the most insulting sentence a human being can hear. We'll always be friends, though. Lila, my now ex, had been distant for weeks leading up to that moment. She called herself an artist, which in her world meant working part-time at a coffee shop, spending her free time talking about the novel she was going to write someday, and acting like people with actual jobs were beneath her. I run a small business restoring classic cars. I make things work again with my own 2 hands. But to Lila and her little circle of self-proclaimed creatives, that made me something simple. Reliable, yes, but simple. To her, I was a sturdy piece of furniture. Dependable, useful, but not something you think about unless it breaks. That night, she sat me down on the couch in our apartment, the apartment where my income paid nearly 80% of the bills, and gave me the talk. I could tell she'd practiced it. Her voice was calm, deliberate, and full of words that sounded poetic but meant nothing. She spoke about nurturing her creative soul and needing to breathe artistically. The subtext was deafening. My grease-stained hands and my logical, problem-solving brain didn't fit into her grand, self-centered vision of destiny. I didn't argue or interrupt. I'm a mechanic. When an engine's dead, you don't talk it into working again. You accept that it's broken. You either rebuild it or scrap it. And this relationship, it was totaled beyond repair. So I just sat there and listened as she outlined the terms of her emotional exit, as though she were negotiating a lease transfer instead of ending something human. Then came the final insult, the patronizing, carefully performed pity. She placed her hand on my knee, gave me a smile that screamed self-importance, and said gently, "We'll always be friends, right?" The way she said it made it clear she thought she was doing me a favor. She expected gratitude. She expected me to nod, to say thank you, to be flattered that she still wanted me in her orbit. She assumed I'd stay in her life, the dependable Ryan, always available to fix her car, lend her money, or offer emotional reassurance whenever her artistic struggles became too heavy, just without any of the messy commitment that comes with love. Something inside me hardened right then. Whatever hurt I might have felt dissolved, replaced by a cold, surgical clarity. She wasn't breaking up with a boyfriend. She was downgrading a utility, reclassifying an asset. I looked straight at her calm, polished expression that made her feel powerful, and gave her the slowest, most deliberate smile of my life. "Absolutely," I said. The relief that washed over her was visible. Her shoulders dropped. She thought she'd managed the perfect breakup, kept her freedom and her safety net. What she didn't know was that my definition of friendship was about to become a brutally expensive life lesson. "Oh, good," she said, smiling for real now. "I'm so glad you're being mature about this." "Of course," I replied, standing up. "That's what friends are for." Then I added, still calm, "As your new friend, let me offer you some friendly advice. You should start looking for a roommate to cover my half of the rent, because I'll be moving out this weekend. My friendship is free, but my share of the bills isn't." The look on her face didn't fade. It shattered. "What? You're moving out?" Her voice cracked with disbelief. "You can't just leave. Where am I supposed to go?" "I'm not sure," I said, heading toward the bedroom to start packing. "But I'm sure a resourceful artist like you will figure it out. Friends believe in each other, right?" Date 1. The very concept of me actually leaving seemed to short-circuit her brain. For the next hour, she followed me from room to room while I packed, her tone ricocheting between disbelief, anger, and panic. "You can't just abandon me here," she cried as I pulled clothes from the closet we shared. "The lease is in both our names. You're legally responsible." "You're right," I said calmly. "We're both legally responsible. That's why I'll keep paying my half of the rent until the end of the month. That gives you 3.5 weeks to find someone new. Or we can break the lease together, That comes with a $2,000 penalty we'd split. I'm fine with either. The mention of a $1,000 charge, money she absolutely didn't have, sent a visible wave of panic over her. Her part-time coffee shop job barely covered her daily caffeine and sketchbook expenses. I had been the one keeping our real life afloat. I can't afford that, and I can't find a roommate in 3 weeks, she said, voice cracking. You have to stay, Ryan. At least until the lease is up in 6 months. It's the decent thing to do. We're friends, remember? I turned to face her, meeting her desperate eyes. Friends don't trap friends in emotionally toxic situations, I said softly. That would be unhealthy. And as your friend, I'm giving you the space you need to find yourself. She just stood there, stunned. Meanwhile, I kept packing. And I'm taking my own space, too, I added with calm finality, zipping up one of my duffel bags. Right at that moment, the front door creaked open, and our third roommate, Zoe, stepped in. Zoe worked as a veterinary technician and rented the apartment's tiny second bedroom. She was the definition of quiet and composed, the kind of person who clocked in long hours at a demanding job and avoided drama like it was a contagious disease. Her schedule was brutal, her patience thin, and she had mastered the art of steering clear of Lila's constant emotional whirlwinds. She paused in the entryway, taking in the scene. My open suitcase on the floor, Lila's tear-streaked face, and the tension thick enough to choke on. Zoe let out a deep sigh that carried more exhaustion than surprise. Don't tell me, she said, her voice flat and weary. Her car broke down again? Worse, Lila wailed dramatically, turning to Zoe for sympathy. He's leaving me. He's moving out. Zoe's eyes met mine over Lila's shoulder. Her expression was perfectly neutral, the kind of look that said she'd already seen enough chaos for one lifetime. I gave a small shrug. We broke up, I explained evenly. I'm packing up my things. I'm paid up through the end of the month, and after that you'll have a new roommate. Zoe gave a slow, deliberate nod. Okay, she said simply. Then, without another word, she walked straight to her room and closed the door. It was a masterclass in disengagement. No questions, no judgment, just quiet retreat. With her audience gone, Lila turned her manipulative energy back on me. That entire weekend became a cycle of emotional theatrics. She tried every tactic in her arsenal. First came the tears, then came the nostalgia. She reminded me of our first date, of the night we danced in the rain, of all the promises we once made. When that didn't work, she switched to guilt and insults, accusing me of being cold, unfeeling, heartless. But I didn't take the bait. Every word I spoke was filtered through the infuriatingly polite lens of friendship. You're really just going to throw away 2 years of memories? She sobbed. As your friend, I said, keeping my voice calm, I think it's important to focus on the future, not the past. That single sentence made her jaw drop. The more detached and kind I became, the more unhinged she grew. By the end of the weekend, I had most of my belongings packed and a new apartment lined up across town. Small, quiet, and mine alone. I started rebuilding my routines, enjoying the peace that came with not having to walk on eggshells. Then, a week later, came the first real test of our new dynamic. It was a Tuesday night when my phone rang. Lila's name lit up the screen. Against my better judgment, I answered. Ryan. Thank God you picked up, she said, her voice trembling. The power just went out, and the internet is down. You have to come fix it. Did you check the breaker box? I asked. The what? She snapped. I don't know anything about that. You always handled it. It's in the utility closet in the hallway, I explained, trying not to laugh. It's probably just a tripped switch. You just need to find the one that's flipped the other way and push it back. I'm not doing that, she said, her tone climbing higher. It's dark and I'm scared. What if I get electrocuted? Please, Ryan, as my friend. There it was, the friendship card drawn like a weapon. I took a slow, deliberate breath. Lila, as your friend, I'm genuinely concerned for your safety. But I'm 2 towns away, and it'd take me an hour to get there. The fastest solution is to call emergency maintenance. They're on call 24/7. The number's on the fridge. Silence. I could practically hear her brain short-circuiting. The idea of using a normal adult solution instead of summoning me had clearly never occurred to her. But they'll charge for that, won't they? she asked finally, her voice small. They might, I said. But as your friend, I think your safety and comfort are worth the cost. Don't you? You've got this. Let me know how it goes. Before she could respond, I hung up. Of course, the calls didn't stop. A few days later, she texted about her car making a weird noise. I suggested taking it to a reputable mechanic. When she complained about the cost, I responded, as your friend, I recommend starting a small savings account for car repairs. Each new problem was met with calm, detached advice. Utterly useless, completely polite, and 100% intentional. I was her friend now, and friends, I reminded her, don't fix your problems. They just offer sympathy and encouragement while you fix them yourself. Update 2. Lila's slow-motion implosion stretched over the next month, and I had a front-row seat thanks to Zoe. After I moved out, Zoe and I began texting occasionally. Started innocently enough. Small updates, warnings, and bits of gossip. She'd message me things like, she's crying again, apparently because the grocery store ran out of oat milk, and I'd reply with a laughing emoji or a sarcastic thoughts and prayers. But then our chats became more real. She'd vent about her exhausting workdays, and I'd tell her about fixing up old cars. It was strange how easy it felt to talk to her. Quiet, grounded Zoe, the person who had once just passed me silently in the hallway. She also kept me updated on Lila's increasingly desperate search for a roommate. Lila wasn't looking for a tenant. She was looking for a replacement me. The ad she posted online read like a wish list for another version of me. Clean, responsible, financially stable, and willing to help around the house. Basically, she wanted to hire a live-in boyfriend who would pay half the rent and handle all the chores. Unsurprisingly, no one applied. Then one night, I got a text from Zoe that felt different. Hey, sorry to bother you, but Milo's really sick. He won't eat and he's just lying there. I don't know what to do. The emergency vet is across town, and I can't take him on the bus. Lila's out with some new guy she met at a poetry reading. I don't know who else to call. I didn't even think. My fingers were already typing before my brain caught up. I'm on my way. I didn't even hesitate. The moment Zoe sent that message, I grabbed my keys, locked up, and drove straight across town. When I arrived, she was waiting outside with Milo wrapped in a blanket, her face pale and worried. Without saying much, she climbed into the passenger seat, clutching the little dog to her chest like something fragile that might shatter. We drove through the quiet city streets to the emergency vet clinic, and I stayed with her the whole night. Those 4 hours in the waiting room went by faster than I expected. We talked about everything and nothing, small talk that somehow felt significant. She told me about the crushing pressure of law school, the sleepless nights, the endless exams, and her fear of not being good enough. I told her about the satisfaction of rebuilding something that was broken. How fixing a classic car from rust to shine felt like restoring a piece of history. We discovered that we shared the same sarcastic sense of humor, the same no-nonsense view of the world, and the same appreciation for quiet moments. By the time the vet came out and told us that Milo was fine, that he'd simply eaten a sock, something between us had shifted. After that night, I found reasons to see her more often. I offered to look at her car, a tired old sedan that rattled like it was held together with prayer. One Saturday, I spent the entire afternoon under the hood changing her oil, replacing her spark plugs, tightening bolts, making it roadworthy again. I didn't ask for money. I did it because I wanted to, because I liked her. We started dating quietly, almost accidentally. It was easy. It was fun. There were no mind games, no manipulation, no unspoken debts. Just two people who enjoyed being together. We kept it private at first because we both knew that if Lila found out, she'd explode into a hurricane of drama. And sure enough, the inevitable confrontation came 2 months later. Lila had finally, miraculously, found a new roommate, a nervous-looking grad student desperate for affordable housing. I had to stop by the apartment to sign papers removing my name from the lease. Zoe had just finished her last final exam, so I told her I'd take her out to celebrate after the signing. She decided to tag along so we could head out right after. When we walked in, the atmosphere was thick with tension. The building manager was seated at the dining table. The new roommate stood awkwardly in the corner, and Lila was talking way too loudly about her new chapter and how everything happens for a reason. It was all performative energy, fake optimism layered over barely contained bitterness. I focused on signing the last document, ready to walk away from that part of my life forever. As I did, Zoe reached out and gently squeezed my hand, just a small, natural gesture of support. But to Lila, it was an act of treason. Her eyes locked onto our hands like laser beams. The fake smile froze on her face, then cracked, then completely fell apart. The color drained from her skin as she stared, motionless, trying to process what she was seeing. It was like watching a dam burst in slow motion. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just looked at us, at me, with a venomous cocktail of disbelief and betrayal. In that single moment, she realized the full extent of what she'd lost. She hadn't just lost a boyfriend. She'd lost her provider, her handyman, her emotional outlet. And now she was watching him hold hands with the quiet roommate she'd barely acknowledged. That was the last time I ever saw her. Final update. It's been a little over a year since that day. Lila and I went our separate ways, hers spiraling downward, mine upward. After that lease signing disaster, her life completely unraveled. The new roommate lasted 6 weeks before moving out in the middle of the night, leaving a note that said he'd rather live in his car than spend another day sharing an apartment with her. Unable to pay the rent alone, Lila was evicted. The last Zoe heard, she'd packed her things and moved back in with her parents. 3 hours away, back to her childhood bedroom. Her big, independent artist life in the city was over before it ever really started. She tried launching a smear campaign online, painting herself as the heartbroken victim and accusing me and Zoe of betrayal. But it didn't work. Everyone knew the truth. She was the one who ended things, the one who wanted space. She had burned too many bridges for anyone to believe her version of events. Meanwhile, my life has never been better. Zoe and I live together now in a small house on the other side of town. It's not fancy, but it's ours. A cozy place with a big yard for Milo and a 2-car garage for my restoration projects. She passed the bar exam and now works as a junior associate at a downtown law firm. We're a team in every sense of the word. We split the bills, share the chores, and support each other's ambitions. There's no resentment, no imbalance, no quiet competition, just mutual respect and peace. It's the most natural, honest relationship I've ever had. My revenge was never some grand scheme. It was quiet, patient, and devastatingly effective. She wanted friendship, so I gave her the purest form of it. Endless advice and zero actual help. I enforced the very boundaries she created, letting her experience the raw consequences of her own choices. While she struggled to survive in the mess she built, I built something better with someone better, right under her nose. And that, I realized, is the most satisfying kind of friendship there is. Goodbye.